Hello and welcome to another episode of the CIRS Group podcast. I'm JC,
And I'm Barbara.
and today we're talking about how to start 2025 right. So, if you are new to CIRS, if you're new to a CIRS diagnosis, what are the steps you can take to get yourself pointed in the right direction really early on in the year?
Yes, Happy New Year, everyone. Happy New Year. Um, yeah, let's make 2025 kick some butt. Let's do that. That's my goal. I hope that's your goal as well. I know JC is already kicking butt. Did you guys know that she has a book out? Can we just plug that really quick? There's a book uh, that is out on Amazon that you can order right this second. JC, tell us about it before we get into all the things, because that will
Yeah,
set your year up right. This is related. Go ahead.
so it was actually released yesterday. So if you had pre-ordered a physical copy, you would have gotten it yesterday. So it's technically my book's publishing birthday. Pretty exciting, but it's the 30-day carnivore boot camp. So if you've been curious about carnivore, it's a really great book just to get you started on the right track. But I also put a lot of stuff about like if carnivore isn't working for you, maybe look into CIRS. And I also have offboarding from carnivore with considerations for that. So if it's not something you want to do long term, it's kind of meant for anyone who's carnivore curious.
That is awesome. And I did pre-order and it has still not arrived. I'm gonna go yell at Amazon or else I would be holding it up right now. But I'm so excited to get it. And it's important to note that for a lot of people, doing something very restricted in your diet, like carnivore, focusing on the non-inflammatory foods, which meat generally is, unless you have histamine issues. And of course, there's, things that you can play with if that's the case. But carnivore does really well with a lot of CIRS people, especially when they're in that beginning phase and they're just looking to just lower the inflammation, lower the pain, and help them get started in that way. So again, it doesn't necessarily have to be this long-term lifestyle change. It's not a life sentence. It can just be a tool to use. So I'm so happy that JC, a CIRS knowledgeable and CIRS aware person, has made a carnivore book because there is some nuance there as to how you might want to adapt that and also, like JC said, get off of carnivore when you are ready and start testing other foods. So I'm excited for it. I know it's going to be a fantastic tool for everyone, and I can't wait to get mine. So, yes, we'll have the link obviously in the show notes for you guys to check that out. But before we get into the rest of the episode, this is not medical advice. We are not medical professionals. Always have to add that disclaimer. Please take these ideas that we present to you and talk to your personal CIRS practitioner or CIRS coach if you are working with one to make sure that these are right for you and to help you adapt them to your life and lifestyle. So, yeah, let's get into it.
So, the first thing to be aware of if you are newly diagnosed is to start looking for a doctor sooner rather than later. There are a limited number of shoemaker certified providers, and you can find them at survivingmold.com. And so a lot of them can only see patients within specific states. We did want to shout out a couple of providers that can see patients out of state. That way, if you don't have a provider in your state or you can't travel to one in a state near you, here are some options. So there's Roots and Branches in Boulder, Colorado, Dr. Lauren Sparks in New Mexico, Dr. Andy Heyman in East Coast State, Dr. Alan Grunning, who operates out of Florida. So definitely, um, even if you have one in your state, or even if you work with one of these providers who see patients out of state, their lead times tend to be really long, like weeks to months. So the sooner you can kind of get that booked, the better.
Yeah, and to be clear, just for added nuance on the on a couple of those doctors, Roots and Branches has several nurse practitioners, I believe, right? Who are all licensed in various states. So they're probably not going to cover all 50 states or 51. I'm kidding. That's a bad joke. Uh, we do have Canadian doctors, by the way, that there are ones, if you check out survivingmold.com, a lot of countries actually are now represented there, which is great. But for people in the States, Roots and Branches has a lot of the country covered, but not all. And Grunning just has two states that I'm aware of, Texas and Florida. So, but those are pretty big states, and they have a lot of CIRS, unfortunately. So I wanted to mention him as well. Dr. Sparks specifically works with a tribal entity, which kind of lets her sidestep some of the insurance issues. And that's more or less why a lot of the doctors are limited to working within state lines, unfortunately. We saw a little bit of relief with this with COVID. A lot of states, especially California, where I lived, kind of opened up their doctors to work with anyone in the states. But since COVID has vanished away, or whatever you want to call it, a lot of governments have gone back to requiring you to see a doctor within your state.
Another option, if none of those providers work for you, is if you have a general practitioner who is willing to take you through the protocol with guidance, you can check out survivingmold.com to see if a proficiency partner, which is like a certified coach, can help guide your practitioner through the protocol. So that is another option if you feel too limited by these CIRS certified practitioners.
Yeah, and if you have like a naturopath or some kind of holistic doctor, somebody integrative medicine, somebody who is a little bit on the open side, maybe they're even fans of keto or carnivore, those are probably good signs that they might be open to this. Maybe they've never heard of CIRS, and you can present to them some of the studies and published literature that Dr. Shoemaker has put out there to introduce them to the idea. We have a couple of those links. I can try to find them that we've linked before, but I can put them in the show notes as well to help you go to your doctor and get them on board. And then, like JC's saying, when you meet with your doctor, hopefully you have also been working with a CIRS coach that can help you come up with the right questions and the ways to direct your doctor to know what part of the protocol you're in, what medication you should be prescribed. And of course, that's something that you can kind of have a team with you. You can even have potentially your coach on the call with you or in the meeting with you when you are meeting with your doctor, and that really would be helpful. So those are some things to think about. Beyond all of the doctor fun stuff, New Year's is a time for New Year's resolutions. Lots of people building new habits, using the fresh, clean slate to move forward in their life with some new things that they want to do. So I wanted to talk a little bit about some CIRS-oriented habits that you might be looking to get started for yourself. The biggest thing that a lot of people have to tackle is cleaning. And so if you are in a position to enlist help, whether it is hired help that you pay for, or you can ask your family to chip in, even if they don't live with you, if they can come over, even if they're just kind of there to help and support you. And there's a thing called body doubling, where if you just have someone come over and kind of be there, it can be very motivating for the person who's procrastinating on a thing they don't want to do, like cleaning, to actually do it. You kind of have a witness there that's helping you, maybe talking you through it. So even if they're physically unable to help you, just having them over for the sole purpose of them being there with you as you clean can be helpful. And some of the cleaning places, the things that you maybe want to focus on. Maybe you just start out with one room, the one room that you spend the most time in. It may feel very overwhelming to think about cleaning your entire house, but if you can focus on one area or one room, or even one type of thing, activity. So you could decide to dust and wipe down surfaces. And that could be the thing that you do that day for, let's say, 30 minutes. And you just get as many surfaces as you can. You set a timer and you do that. And then you can feel accomplished and celebrate at the end of that. I think that's fantastic. Any move you can make towards that direction of cleaning your environment is going to be beneficial for you.
Some other habits you will want to start building is vacuuming frequently, and ideally that would be with a HEPA sealed vacuum. That way you're not just blowing all the crud back into the space. And then also making sure that your bathrooms and generally sinks are really clean, or I should say any sort of drain. One of the considerations for CIRS patients is endotoxins, which is like sewer smells, and it can come from drains. So just hydrating all of your drains and keeping a schedule for that to make sure they don't dry out. But in terms of your bathroom, looking at, I don't know about you, but like sometimes the bottles in my shower get gross, like kind of slimy on the bottom. That is mold. So make sure you're cleaning that out. Personally, I use vinegar as my cleaning solution, but you could also use a multi-purpose cleaner or Fantastic, whatever kind of resonates with you. The important thing about cleaning is frequency, not necessarily using the most effective cleaning agent. It's really about the frequency and making sure you're doing it frequently enough and getting it out of there. So using things like disposable microfiber cloths or paper towels so that you're not washing that and just reintroducing it into your environment.
A little trick that I remember doing when I was bartending, there's if anyone doesn't know, if you never looked behind a bar, there's like a little rack that all the bottles, the ones that you use most often, that are all sitting kind of like attached to the sink. And every night, part of the closing routine that I did every time I closed the bar was to pick up every bottle and wipe the bottom of it. And there wasn't like it was open a little bit, so it wasn't like there was a lot of stuff collecting there, but I really appreciate just that daily thing that we did. It was just one thing on the checklist to do before the end of the night was wipe down all the bottles on the bottom. And they weren't, again, they weren't gross, but they weren't gross because we did that every day, which is really important. And one trick that I did for myself, I have kind of like a bench in my shower that is perfect for putting bottles down onto it. But to JC's point, they got gross. And then even the fact that they were sitting there made the idea of wiping down that bench, it had more friction for me to actually do it because I'd have to take all those bottles and put them somewhere else and then clean and then put the bottles back. It just felt like a lot. So what I invested in was like I mean, I'll link to it in case it's useful for anyone, was a little wire rack, two of them that just suction to the wall, but it's wire underneath again to promote that airflow so none of the bottles are sitting in their own gunk. And that has been fantastic. Even though I have the space to put bottles, it was so nice to get them up and off of that bench. So now I'm much more likely to clean that bench more often and also to keep my bottles from growing anything gross underneath. So, yeah, some tips for you in case those are helpful.
And if you do have any gross drains, green gobbler is what the remediators at Surviving Mold recommend. So you can get that on Amazon again and use that to clear out your drains.
Yeah, and you may even want to subscribe, do the little subscribe and save. I'm an Amazon commercial now. But every time one shows up, if you set it like that, you can get into a routine of I'm going to go dump this one down a drain that's kind of starting to smell or that I haven't, dealt with in a while. And just make that a thing that you do every now and then. You can dump it in there, leave it overnight, and then in the morning when you use it, use hot water to rinse through before, actually using that thing, whether it's a bathtub or a sink. But yeah, that's a great product, relatively low on the, uh, I don't know, toxic level, as far as it's a little better than Drano, for example. So, and it is one that I've heard IEPs, indoor environmental professionals that know about CIRS, have recommended in the past.
Next up, and this one is anytime we get a new member in the group, they're like, how do you time supplements and medications? Because like, I remember when I first got my CIRS protocol together and I was on the binders, I had sticky notes that I would like move from one side of my desk to the other throughout the day to be like, I took those, I took those. Now I have pill organizers that I use. So you just kind of have to find a method that works for you. Personally, I found it really helpful to have timers on my phone. So I would take my first dose, and then throughout the day, I would have subsequent timers for each time I needed to take a dose of something.
Yeah. And if you are not quite so organized, because I'm not, although I've tried and succeeded using a lot of what JC just described. But towards once I got a little bit more comfortable with the supplements and medication, I could visually identify them as well, because they all look a little bit different. I would just the night before throw all my pills and supplements into a dish. And so I put it next to the fridge. So every time I went to get some more water or a drink or food, I would see that dish and it would remind me to actually take something. And I would look to see okay, time of day. Okay, it's this thing. So I had probably a little more sloppy way of doing it. It was not perfect, but at the same time, having it visually out in a place that I go to often, maybe it's your desk, maybe it's your bathroom counter where you brush your teeth. There's places in your life that you can put something visually out there for you to see, and it will remind you to do that. I mean, you can even like leave the vacuum out. As much like if you're not having guests over, you may want to just leave it out so visually it reminds you, oh yeah, I should probably vacuum. So you may want to do little things like that to help remind you to actually do it.
Another thing that I think a lot of people consider when you get into the new year is fitness and movement. And this can be a tricky thing for CIRS patients. We have this thing called a push crash phenomenon. And what it means is you'll feel really good one day. And so you'll do the most, and then you'll be wiped out for the next 3 to 5 days. And so it's really important, if that is something that you experience, that you slowly scale up the exercise that you're doing. And I've done this 3 times now, but essentially every time I do it, what I do is I start with a like full body exercise plan, and I'll do it for 3 minutes a day for the first week, every day, 3 minutes of movement. And then the next week, I'll do 5 minutes of movement. Next week, I'll do 7 minutes of movement per day. And you actually scale up that slowly. It is frustrating, especially if you're someone who's used to being mobile, used to being fit. But this will prevent you from having the crash and having to start all over again.
I was just going to say the fact that you've done it 3 different times just shows how much of an expert you are at it and how much you've had to deal with like feeling that and being in tune with your body to know that that is actually an important step and it's really good not to rush it. So I'm glad that you're emphasizing that.
Yeah, and another important thing is you kind of want to start with mobility in terms of whatever fitness regimen you're doing. If you start with mobility, you're going to have a really great foundation for whatever you choose to do next. So things like stretching, yoga, those things that are going to allow your body to move in the ways that it needs to safely at the point you start adding things like weight or endurance is going to make that journey a lot easier as well.
Yeah. And the one thing that I'll say, because we're beaten up on how slow and boring the CIRS titration up is for fitness. But what I really like about it as far as building a habit is you say 3 minutes a day. Like, who can't do 3 minutes a day? Like, it's so easy. It's almost dumb if you don't do it. And I'm not beating up on anyone who's like, I can't, I won't, I haven't. But find what works for you as far as making it as easy as possible. Maybe it's not every day. Maybe it's 2 days a week to start. You know what I mean? Like give yourself just find something that is and by the way, only like 10 minutes each time or 3 minutes each time and it's twice a week. Really start as slow as you feel like you need to so that you're building just that consistency. And maybe you've set a timer for 3 minutes and it happens, and you're like, I could do another set. And then you do a little extra more than you thought you were going to. Always celebrate that and be really proud of yourself for showing up. But I do like that slow progression just for the habit building part of it. More, even just as much as obviously being easy on your body as you're recovering from SIRS. The next thing you may want to incorporate is, and I should also clarify, probably don't want to do all of these things at the same time. Like we're giving you a bunch of different options here, different categories of things. I am a big supporter of prioritizing one and building habits in that one, and then maybe thinking about the next most impactful thing that you can incorporate. So the next thing that we'll talk about to consider adding is limbic retraining or just taking care of yourself mentally, in other words. Some things that I know we've had people on the podcast to kind of support the idea of meditation, mindfulness, breath work, taking the time to consider what your limiting beliefs are and maybe rewriting those and turning them into affirmations. I did that with something I finally did this year was create a vision board for the year, and I'm really excited about it. And JC's made quite a few. She has more experience in making vision boards than I do, but I made my first one this year, and it's really nice to just kind of visually see all of your goals laid out and be reminded of that on a daily basis. You want to get that printed or put maybe just save it to your phone or save it to your computer wallpaper so that you see it every single day. Anything that brings you joy, you want to brings you joy or makes you motivated, you'll want to put on your vision board to kind of keep yourself going and make sure that you're still reaching for your goals even on the hard days. So that anything that you can do in that department, I think is really helpful to support you in all the other efforts you're making.
Yeah, and we did an episode on limbic retraining, and in it, I spoke ad nauseum about my favorite book for this. It's called The Joy Plan, and it's by Kaya Roman. And I read it at a point when I was just kind of miserable, to be honest. And I was like, I need to pursue joy. So I just found it in my library app. And it was a game changer for me. She has a good combination of it's a little bit woo-woo, a little bit science, a little bit storytelling, a little bit practical application. But there's so many tips in that book. And it's kind of like this podcast where you can take what resonates with you and leave the rest.
Yeah, it's such a great book, guys. I loved it as well and loaned it out, which to me that means I really love the book because I'm like, someone else, you need to see this as well. So yes, definitely check out that book if you're wondering where to start. It's a great kind of memoir style book. So if you enjoy that style of writing, I do. So it was a really easy book to read and work through your own stuff as you read it. So yeah, good stuff. I think we'll wrap with this final uh, suggestion, which is finding yourself a support network or an accountability group or buddy, someone or people that can help you when the days are tough, that can support you and cheer you on. You'll want also to have that sense of accountability to announce what your goals are. Make sure you tell your partner or your best friend or anybody, anyone you trust in your life who you know they're going to listen to you and cheer you on and encourage you as opposed to, be a Debbie Downer or be lame about it. Um, Find those people, find your tribe, whoever that is, and lean on them when these things get tough because they will. And having some kind of accountability group or support system in place is crucial for your success. This step you should not skip. You should definitely find somebody to help you with all the things that you are trying to do, even if it is just moral support and not like actually actively helping you do it.
Yeah, and if you don't have people like that in your life, plug for the CIRS group. It's people who are healing from CIRS, so they get what you're going through. A lot of people in there, they'll share that their family members or their friends aren't on board, they don't understand. And so it's really nice to have a community that just gets it. Like when we're in the group calls, we have monthly group calls, and we have two rules. You're not allowed to apologize for having CIRS brain and crying. You're not allowed to apologize for crying either. It's part of the CIRS journey, and it's going to be difficult at times, to Barbara's point. So there's no reason not to have that support. One thing we did want to mention is that there are a lot of free groups out there as well. And we would just caution you to make sure that they're well moderated if you choose to join them, because we've seen some kind of wild, inappropriate, dangerous suggestions in groups like those. So just a word of caution there.
Yeah, it's that is a benefit to paying for a group. It's there's some level of investment that that person needs to have in order to shell out money to join a group. And that's a mindset that's going to be very optimistic and goal oriented, generally speaking. So that's why I think there's a number of paid groups. It's not just the CIRS group. I know we've talked about others here in the past, and we can link some below in the description box if you're interested. So just find one that works best for you, that is led by people that you really connect with, and that when you do join, take a look around, interact with some people, and if you're having some really positive interactions, then that's a good sign that it's a good place for you to be. But yeah, if you are interested in joining the CIRS group, we do have monthly group calls where people share, everybody's on screen, and you can be on camera or not if you want to or not. And you can uh, interact in the chat as well if you don't want to speak up like on camera. We also have a monthly Q&A. We've done those publicly every now and then, but every single month JC and I do a monthly Q&A where those members get to ask us whatever they'd like, and we kind of rapid fire go through uh, all of the things and help them out. And we get a lot of really good information because there's a lot of really good questions out there. So those are great. And then we also do a monthly class. We pick a random topic that is related to CIRS, something that we think the group could really benefit from. And JC or I, or sometimes we have guest speakers come in and teach those classes. So 3 events every month. And then, of course, the community itself, when you log in, you can post at any hour of the day. And there's probably someone else on there who's going to respond to you and offer support or resources or answer your question. And it's just been a really solid community. It's been around now almost like 2.5 years we've had it. Look at that. And so it's just a beautiful community and it's searchable too. So if you don't want to necessarily post, you can just search a few keywords and I'm sure you'll find someone else has asked a similar question that you're thinking of and you can see what people have said. And beyond that, of course, if you don't want to join a group, you have this podcast. We give you an episode just about every week. And of course, you can check out our Instagram account where we post regularly tips and info there as well. And all the beautiful graphics are done by our very own JC. So enjoy those there for sure. And we'll link to everything in the show notes.
Well, good luck in your New Year's goals, everyone. I'm so excited for us. I think a lot of us, all of us, are going to kick 2025's butt.
Mhm.
But in the meantime, for more resources and support, you can join us over at thesourcegroup.com.
We will see you there.